More details for Total War Warhammer 40k are about a month away as we here in the sunny UK slowly head into spring, at which point Creative Assembly are slated to kick off their marketing machine with both campaign and battle gameplay showcases. That's exciting stuff. With over 1 million wishlists on Steam, it's obvious that grimdark future Total War has garnered tons of hype, and rightfully so. The 40k setting plus Total War is for many of us a match made in heaven, or the warp, way back before it was a murder fuck shit demon hellscape. However, is the hype truly warranted? Should we approach Total War 40k's release with more caution rather than full-blown hyper-optimism? There are good reasons for this, and while we wait to get more details and footage of the game in action, and given the lack of anything concrete to talk about until March, I figured, hey, why not discuss the potential problems that Total War Warhammer 40k faces before it's even given a release date, and how these problems could hopefully become dry, hollow, nothing burgers thanks to the fact that Creative Assembly appear to be communicating better, acknowledging issues with their previous titles, and that Total War 40k is running on a brand new engine, which might allow them to circumvent the bugbears so many players have with Warhammer 3 and all the titles in the franchise altogether. It is, after all, only natural to weigh a company's future releases against the successes and failings of its predecessors, and there's no denying that Total War Warhammer 3 has been a very successful game, and that it's possible of providing a genuinely fun, deep, engaging, and complex experience. However, digging ever so slightly below the surface exposes the warts that have plagued it and previous titles over the entire franchise's history. The last thing anyone would want is for 40k Total War to echo the same problems older titles have had even to this day. Problems that can destroy one's motivation to even play or outright remove the challenge from the game due to ridiculously exploitative, borderline catatonic AI opponents. So the first problem I want to talk about is the renowned idle AI army bug that led to the recent Steam score tanking controversy, and how it's just one symptom of general game campaign balance. Obviously, idle AI in particular is not guaranteed to be a problem in Total War 40k, it being on a brand new engine and all, but this is just one example, a prevalent one at that, of AI behaving in such a way that just diminishes any and all challenge that the game could otherwise provide. I recently finished a legendary difficulty campaign with Emperor Karl Franz and managed to avoid this bug for the most part. But what turned an otherwise incredibly fun and challenging Total War experience, at least for the first 20 turns or so, into a total joke near the end was once the endgame scenario had actually triggered, which was unfortunately dwarves in my case, every enemy army idled around a random stronghold instead of defending the final settlement that I required for ultimate campaign victory. What could have been a series of climatic, albeit grindy battles for control of Karazakarak as the 7th required province for ultimate campaign victory ended up requiring a single easy auto-resolve win because the AI clumped up at a completely random, meaningless settlement, a stone's throw away from where the finale should have taken place. Now, as I said before, the chances of this bug being an actual problem in Total War 40k are slim to none, but the discussion shouldn't be around this particular bug as it exists in Warhammer 3. It's just an example, and at least Creative Assembly have acknowledged it, so the discussion should be about how 40k aims to maintain challenge and reasons to continue playing as you progress through the game and fix the snowball effect that trivializes campaigns. Just about every Total War game in the past has suffered from the same problem, whether obvious or not. Barely anyone actually manages to finish their campaigns because they devolve into boring repetitive slogs where any and all actual challenge becomes absent after the first 10 to 20 turns. Which is a true shame, because those first 10 to 20 turns for a given faction are typically incredibly fun and challenging, at least in the current Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. It almost feels like there's a core flaw, that the AI is never really looking at the big picture or actually trying to win the game, and historically, Creative Assembly's attempts to rectify this have been to just increase the numbers of things to provide the illusion of challenge, be that more enemy armies or higher stat modifiers or more cheats for the AI. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure that it's an incredibly difficult thing to get right, especially given the scale and sheer amount of content in Warhammer 3, but after 25 years of Total War games, I would have hoped that they would be further along in perfecting the formula to make the game the best version of itself that it could be. All Total War games could be 10 out of 10 perfect legendary experiences if they were designed from the ground up at all stages from early to mid to late game, with intentional mechanics working as they are supposed to provide the correct type of challenge and gameplay that such grand strategy titles deserve. We are yet to see Total War 40K's campaign or battle maps in action. What they've mentioned so far sounds bold, exciting and new, but we shouldn't let the shiny new things that make for great marketing distract from the real conversations that Creative Assembly should be having with its players. Will Total War Warhammer 40k and Medieval 3 for that matter address these long-standing problems that at this point have just become synonymous with their titles? Now, the 40k setting does lend itself to massive opportunities to get creative, it being the first science fiction setting for the franchise, but more importantly, intentful with their design and balance of the game. Hopefully, by the very nature of the mechanics they deem fit to implement at a foundational level and how the game behaves at its core, things like unresponsive or nonsensical AI decision-making and the laughably easy reality of the mid to late game will become things of the past. The next problem is one that's been talked about so much that if Siege gameplay was a dead horse, it's been beaten so thoroughly that it's now nothing but a clump of horsey gore, so utterly obliterated Khorne himself would care for once from whence the blood flows and just say no. Sieges are the most inexcusably broken component of Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires to date. So much so that I don't think anyone could really blame someone if they called the game a scam because of how utterly broken they are. After all, Total War games are split up into two parts: turn-based campaigns and real-time battles. Battles come in two flavors: land battles and settlement battles. That's 25% of the game that just doesn't work properly, and that's a huge problem. Pathing deteriorates into shambles, ranged units become incapable of firing, and God forbid if walls and gates are involved. Capturing a faction's Tier 5 capital should be the most exciting and most challenging pinnacle part of the game. Huge fortresses with indomitable defenses that require you to plan, strategize, or at least think about how to even begin to approach them. Instead, they are the easiest and most exploitable parts of the game. The AI barely registers that you even exist when they're in the settlement, letting you whittle them down with ranged units and spellcasters unable to leave their prison and just allow themselves to get absolutely abused. What should be epic, difficult cornerstone battles of a campaign simply become one-sided spawn campfests, and it destroys any motivation to continue playing the game. Now, to Creative Assembly's credit, recent updates and blogs have addressed these issues. They ran a Siege rework beta a concerningly long time ago, but based on their most recent communications, they appear to be genuinely dedicated to fixing these issues and providing us with a version of Total War Warhammer 3 that, to be honest, we should already have. It's been 4 years after all. Now, I'm not saying sieges are guaranteed to be broken jokes in Total War 40k, but players need to consider what this game could ultimately be released as when their literal previous game has had such glaring issues for the past 4 years. Perhaps I'm naive, but I do actually in fact remain optimistic, not only for Total War 40k, but for the future of Warhammer 3 as well. I do think CA wants to improve the game and turn it into the best version of itself. After all, they want the next big Lords of the End Times DLC to sell well, but we and Creative Assembly need to be reminded that getting shiny new toys is pointless if the sandbox sucks. The last issue that I think Total War 40k will face is the lack of content it will have on release, and if it can maintain player interest as they slowly work on the DLC machine that will inevitably add more stuff to the game. For many Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires players, it's going to be incredibly jarring going from such a jam-packed game with 24 factions to 4 factions occupying an entire galaxy. This is obviously the least problematic thing that Total War 40k could experience, and gameplay mechanics and campaign health should come first and foremost, and there's simply nothing to do about it, since filling it up with the sheer amount of content it will undoubtedly end up with one day will just take time. We can do nothing but accept that day one of its release is going to feel incredibly empty, especially if you've been playing Warhammer 3. Let's just hope that Total War 40k doesn't end up with 10 years of code spaghettification like its predecessors, and that Creative Assembly learns from their past mistakes, and that from patch to patch, version to version, Total War Warhammer 40k consistently plays as the best version of itself. Over the years, nothing has been able to come close to the battles we've been experiencing in a Total War game. These are ultimately incredible titles, and very few games, if any at all, have managed to capture the grand scope of war and sheer faction diversity on display in your average campaign. Just look at the sick B-roll. There is no doubt that Creative Assembly will bring this incredible fidelity of real-time war to 40k, and they will do it justice, but let's just hope they manage to get it right and not let 75% of the game get absolutely tarnished by 25% of mechanics destroying players' motivations to keep playing their amazing game. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be covering the crap out of Total War Warhammer 40k with news, discussions, and one day gameplay, so like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.